And yes, we are live this Thursday, August 27th, for our preview of the Mesoamerican Regional Forum, which takes place at the top of September. My name is Ron Motter. I'm the host of Planeta.com and the Director of Communications for the Tapas Group, part of the IUCN WCPA, and joined here by a good friend and colleague in the Caribbean, Lloyd Gardner. Lloyd, good morning there.
Good morning, Ron, and good morning to all of our colleagues who are listening or maybe watching in the future.
That's right. Yeah, for the folks watching in real time, your questions are welcome. We have the Q&A app active, and comments are welcome on our Google event and YouTube pages. And for the 100 people that will watch later on, well, thank you for watching. Lloyd, set us up. What's happening?
Well, the purpose of the chat is really to, in my mind, share with our colleagues in WCPA and for other interested parties a process. IUCN has entered into what is called its regional forum. So there are, I think, 13 IUCN regions by statute, and each region has this forum leading into the World Conservation Congress in 2016. As part of that process, they developed a new work plan, a new program, if you wish. The normal, what they call IUCN's one program. So they have, the next program is 2017 to 2020. And so the forum feeds into that process in terms of looking at the need for the motions that will be decided, be discussed and approved during the Congress, to look at the process for the Congress, and to review the program itself that will be finalized at the Congress. So there is a draft program now that's available for discussion, and so that's part of the discussion that will take place. The structure of the Mesoamerican Forum, as I understand it, and unfortunately I don't have a recent agenda to share, but the structure as I understand it is that it's a 3-day forum. The first day will focus on the activities in Panama, the sort of global contributions or reporting what is happening on Panama in that country. And so the government agencies, non-profits, universities, community groups will have a chance to hear and to share what their programs are. Days 2 and 3 will focus more on preparing for the Congress. So there is a section dealing with what they call knowledge sharing for the sub-regions in the Mesoamerican and the Caribbean region. What are the things that are happening that contributes to the program? What lessons have been learned? How has the union, which means all of the parts of IUCN, how have they worked together in the past, how they should work together in the future? And then how does that translate into setting targets and indicators for the draft program going forward into, I think, 2028. So there's a 4-year strategy period, but this program also looks beyond that to 2028. So that's this sort of structure for the 3 days.
Beautiful. Do you have any idea how many people will be attending this meeting?
I don't know. I assume that day 1, usually as many members as possible. So we have people from the Caribbean who will be going to Panama, and of course Mesoamerica is what some people refer to as Central America. Some of the Latin American group, the South American members will also be going to that meeting. So I don't know what the numbers look like at all. I expect it to be north of 100, certainly for day 1 where there are more local institutions focusing on the national programming issues.
Beautiful. And does Mesoamerica also include Mexico?
Yes, the office that's organizing this is now called the Regional Office for Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. So Mexico is definitely participating in this meeting.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I wish you very well at this event, and hoping that if we can't have live video during the forum, that we can do some sort of a recap afterward.
Yes.
And again, as far as the World Conservation Congress, my only question is, well, what's the hashtag? But we'll pester the organizers later for that.
We hope they will share that later on, yes.
Well, walk us through some of the documents or some of the presentation materials you have.
Okay, the first one I'm going to sort of share is the summary of the promise of Sydney, because that essentially is for WCPA, for protected areas, sort of global plan framework for the next 10 years. That sets the global agenda for the next 10 years. We're told that's the purpose. So let's, if I may, walk us quickly through a very long summary of what came out of Sydney, and then we can talk about how that fits into the draft program, or the draft IUCN program. So if I may share my screen now, and then and look at the video. Will that work, Ron?
Let's see.
Okay. So we're going to queue up.
Beautiful. Yeah, we see your slide share.
Okay. So this document is a very, as I say, is a summary, and it was made available to basically the WCPA steering committee and all of the other people on the committee, and essentially it's for use in this forum process. And so if I may quickly go through, it's a very long presentation, but we won't dwell on each slide.
We have time. Go ahead.
Okay, so that's just shot from the Congress, and this summarizes just the level of participation in terms of just the numbers of workshops, people, etc.
No.
So a fairly large gathering, as we know.
1 second, Lloyd. We're still seeing just the front piece.
You're not seeing the second slide.
No. What did we do the last time that made it work?
Okay.
Take your time. Take your time, folks. We'll get this working. Yep, I see the slide 3 now. 5,000 delegates. I see the slide 2 now. Perfect. I see the crowd.
Okay, I am not so sure. Let's try that again.
Okay, I'm seeing again slide 3. That's fine.
Okay, are you seeing the first slide now?
No, I'm seeing slide 3.
Anything happened?
No, I'm still seeing slide 3.
No, this is strange. Okay.
Now I'm seeing a different slide. Here are people at a table.
Okay.
I see 2.
Apparently, I have to run it from this. This is very strange. I'm not so sure why. You know what? Let me. Yeah. This is not.
Yeah, you got it working. All right, or more or less.
All right. So this is.
And Lloyd, 1 second. And if we can, I would really like to see if we can put this in a place where people can look at it in public. So if we can, like, upload it to Slideshare or something. But your narration will be the most important once we figure out how to at least get some semblance of viewing what you think you're showing and what we're seeing. I see setup show. And a reminder to our viewers, please bear with us, our technical glitches, but your questions and your comments are most welcome.
Okay. Tell me what you're seeing.
I see that split photo of the people on stage and the people at tables.
Still. Promise of Sydney?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
There we are. There's the promise.
This is what you're seeing. This is not good because then you're seeing.
Can you? Well, if you want to. Oh, yeah. That's right. Well, you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and then you can. If you can move the click to add notes down, and That way it'll expand what we can see in that frame. And I wouldn't zoom in, otherwise we're not seeing as much. But if, as I say, there's that click to add notes. If we can not see that, or can you just scroll it down, or can you make it smaller? That note box. Yeah, that's it. Yep, that's much better. Yeah, we see the whole. Yes, we see the whole slide.
Okay.
And we see the whole slide of the people at the table and the people on the stage.
All right. So again, just another shot from. I apologize to our viewers for I'm not so sure why I'm getting these, why it's not working, and my screen is jumping for some reason. But anyway.
Promise of Sydney. Promise of Sydney. That's what we see.
So this is the big output. It has 4 pieces. The vision, which essentially was drafted before the Congress started and got finalized during the Congress. Innovative approaches, and this comes out of the approaches were developed out of the streams, the 8 streams, themes, and 4 overlapping cross-cutting themes, and we'll get to that in a minute. The solutions are being shared through a new portal. The website is called Panorama.
Panorama.
And the 4th piece of it is the pledges from governments and large institutions and civil society about what they will do to implement the promise of Sydney and how they will work together and individually to advance this agenda. So those are the 4 pieces that make up the promise of Sydney. It's not just one thing. The vision, a lot of people know about, but it is actually these 4 pieces that together make up the promise of Sydney.
Beautiful.
Okay. The vision, and you should have seen this before, so I'm not going to dwell on many of these, just to show you what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And the vision continues. Well, they promise to do this, they promise to inspire, they promise to do all of these things, hence the promise of Sydney. Okay. The innovative approaches. The Congress, the World Past Congress was organized, as I said, mainly around 8 streams, and these are the 8 streams, and 4 cross-cutting themes. So these are the 8 themes, 8 streams that were in the Congress, and the 8 streams and these 4 cross-cutting themes produce, as I said, a total of 150 recommendations for change going forward. The solutions, as I mentioned, by the way, just to step back a bit, all of this is available. The detailed recommendations from each cross-cutting theme and from each stream are available online. If people have not seen it yet, the website is still up, and you can actually go and see all of these recommendations, see which ones work for you, which ones you can support, or which ones you can adapt. And then, of course, here's some information that actually is supposed to help you to see how other people have done it. So Panorama is the mechanism that is being used for sharing success stories in protected areas management and to show how protected areas support development process. So that's the 3rd piece. And then the promises, which are the commitments from governments, large institutions, and civil society. Okay. All of these can be, the 150 recommendations can be sort of grouped around a number of main themes, if you wish. And so the first is that we have to just get better at it. I mean, there are problems, and we need to actually make sure we get better at dealing with raising the issues. So, as I say, raising the bar. We must get it right. We need to be effective. We need to increase capacity, etc., etc., etc. So we need to make sure that we improve the way we do it. And part of that is through these targets that some people may know about. It is part of the Convention on Biological Diversity and the targets within that. Protected areas support several of those targets, but primarily target 11, which deals with the acreage, if you wish, that should be under protection through the mechanism of protected areas. There are also other conserved areas, but protected areas has a very set target. So that's one element. One of the ways to do that is through development of standards, and IUCN has developed this green list standard for protected areas, which looks at how we actually deliver high quality protected areas to make sure that they're equitably governed, they're effectively managed, and they protect both natural values and respect social values in that process. Still within the standards, so that first improve, remember the first pillar, if you wish, was improve quality. This is still on the green list, and this basically shows that they are going into the World Parks Congress in 2014 and coming out of it, is that there are a number of partners that were attempting to actually initiate this green listing process, and this just gives us some numbers in terms of the partnership in 2014. Okay, so country partners, number of protected areas, number of sites that have were already nominated, which ones, how many achieved the green list standards, number of experts involved, and so on and so forth. That number has not changed, as you would expect, since we're 8 months, well, into the new year, so into the post-Sydney era.
1 second, Lloyd. One second. One question I have is, well, how many protected areas are actually in the green list? I see nominations, but are there actually a number of have any been accepted?
Yes. These are the ones, for example, the 514 and 5. That's 19, and okay, but if I could just zoom in a little bit so that people can see this list right at the bottom. So there are a number of countries already have sites in the first phase, and a number of them have been approved. I don't have the number right now. There are some sites that, as I said, there was some testing leading into Sydney, and this shows you that 23 have already achieved the standard. So okay. It was just about formalizing the process for those 23, and I think that has been done. And there have been some new requests for getting countries and sites into that list. So there have been several webinars hosted by IUCN Secretariat staff focused on the green list process and getting new sites nominated to be listed as green lists.
Are any of those webinars public?
Those webinars were advertised. I don't know if the proceedings are available to be watched by through YouTube or any other mechanisms, but I know the webinars were published to a fair extent. I saw a number of notices I circulated, certainly within our regional network, those notices. I don't know the extent to which they were attended, and I don't know if they're available. We can certainly check with the Secretariat based in England to make those available if they are.
Exactly. If they are available, we'd love to link to it.
Yeah, right. Okay. So the first strand or pillar, if you wish, was just improving the way we do business, getting the level of success higher. The second pillar is capacity. How do we make sure that we have the right capacity to deliver And since the previous Parks Congress, which was 2003, I think, as a significant amount of work has gone into capacity development, but the pace accelerated, I would say, in the last 3 years, leading into Sydney. So the issue of making sure that you have professionals working in protected areas, not that they're not there, but to a great extent, those skills are not necessarily recognized as professional skills, separate and apart from other skill sets. How do you make sure that they're competent? There's a body of knowledge that supports the capacity, the partnerships that need to be developed, etc., etc., etc. So how do they see the three elements, I mean, the different elements of capacity being implemented? First is this, these are part of the supporting products. So when you look at governance and management, the development issues, guidelines, more guidelines. So there's this whole set of guidelines and what we call knowledge products that support that process. Again, and Parks, the Protected Areas magazine, that's prepared, produced, and circulated free of cost. Well, free to the public. Of course, there's a cost to doing this, but it is available to the public. Those are some of the knowledge products that support this process, and we'll get back to the professionalization bit a little bit more, because there are now courses and delivery mechanisms, and there's several universities and other bodies that are on board to deliver some of these courses. There are some MOOCs, what they call these massive open online courses being developed, and there are some additional materials being developed to support those modules, the teaching of different modules. Okay, this is marine, so there's a major focus on marine, as you know. For those who may not know, in addition to the World Parks Congress, there's also another global congress which deals with the marine side of things. So that international meeting takes place on a more frequent basis, and it focuses specifically on marine issues and how those are going to be handled. So there's an attempt, of course, to make sure that those processes, World Parks Congress, the impact, which is the Marine Congress, on all of the other processes dealing with protected areas converge. So there's a large marine component, as you would expect, within the Promise of Sydney. Okay, again, this is just a National Geographic article coming out of Sydney that talks about oceans. And this is another element, World Heritage. How do we support it? As some people may know, IUCN is one of the not just observers, but what they call one of the technical agencies providing support to the implementation of the World Heritage Convention. There are two other bodies, technical bodies, dealing with on the cultural side, but IUCN is the technical advisory institution on the natural heritage side. So again, there's a major component of the promise that deals with natural heritage. And how has that been rolling out? One of the ways is to look at this outlook. This is a report that was produced. It was the World Heritage Outlook 2014 was what is the word I'm searching, struggling. Was launched in Sydney, but it's as you can see from this very significant assessment. It's a global assessment, and there are regional assessments that support this process. So there is a regional World Heritage Outlook for the Caribbean as well. But World Heritage is a major part of the program, and we will continue to support. IUCN, that is, will continue to support regional activity and global activity in terms of the World Heritage Convention and its and the supporting bodies. Okay. I think I moved a little too fast. Okay, so governance, major part of it. Governance actually was one of the streams, but also how do we make this happen in terms of the institutional frameworks to make sure that customer laws, community rights, equity, and all of those things, how are they addressed? And so there's a plank in the Promise of Sydney that deals with the issue of governance. And again, one of the supporting pieces to make that happen is a primer on governance for protected areas conservation was launched, and a number of other knowledge products are being developed, have been developed, and are consistently being developed to support the implementation of these different ideas, concepts, and programs. Indigenous and traditional knowledge and culture was one of the major streams in Sydney, and it acknowledges and now formalizes, I think, or puts more structure and more support to the issue of indigenous knowledge and rights within the context of protected areas management. It's Sydney, the World Parks Congress in Sydney in 2014 just had a major emphasis on indigenous indigenous and traditional culture and knowledge and rights, and supporting how indigenous peoples and local groups will actually manage protected areas. So again, lots of supporting elements as you work through these different planks. IUCN, WCPA, and its partners are developing the tools to make sure that these ideas, these concepts that they're supporting, knowledge products, supporting processes, to make sure that they can be delivered. New generation, all the entire environmental movement, well, social movements are all about doing this for the next generation, the whole issue of sustainability, but also to make sure that younger people are fully involved in the current processes. So again, there was a stream, if you remember my earlier slide, there was a stream that focused on the new generation and some of the elements that came out of that process and will feed into other processes. There is a separate strand, not just the Promise of Sydney, but there is a strand dealing with new social compacts, dealing with the next generation, and they are supporting elements. IUCN has, but also other institutions like UNESCO and other groups also have youth and next generation processes, and WCPA certainly supports that, primarily through the WCPA Young Professionals Group, but also in other ways. So you will find the next generation or Young Professionals Group also having taken, what should I say, leadership roles in part of the delivery of the marine program, etc., etc.
Lloyd, 1 second. Are
Yes.
we going to see some connection between like the new generation?
Sorry?
Are we going to see a new generation approach also at this Mesoamerican Regional Forum? Or are we going to see a strong contingent of young people in Panama?
I don't know if it's been, as far as I could see, and I don't have the final program, but I don't have a sense that there's a separate young folks or new generation or, you know, young professionals focus. Certainly from our perspective on the WCPA, what we're trying to do, and certainly from the Caribbean and my own view, and it's a view, I think, of the young generation, that you don't create a separate space for them, but you make sure that they're involved in all of the different processes, in all of the discussions, that they're always at the table. As one of the sort of co-leaders of the WCPA Young Professionals Group said, it is not a pipeline issue. It is not about preparing them for later. It is not the next. They're here, They're one of the stakeholder groups. They're one of the affective groups. They have ideas. They have skills, and they function in different ways. And so our current programs, our current designs, our current decisions, discussions must involve all of the groups, and certainly the younger people are one of those blocks. So I don't see the forum in Panama, I don't see any focus or an attempt to separate them out as a separate area of focus, but to the extent to which they're there and the extent to which we can support their voice in the process, I think is the important thing.
Agreed. I don't think they should be considered apart, but the question is to what degree are they included at this upcoming meeting?
Right. And that I don't know. I'm hoping that they won't be shut out. You know, you in these discussions, and because some of them might not have as much experience either at process or just in terms of their career, they tend not to have as much, even if they're in the room, their voices are not given as much credence as some more experienced folks. So I'm hoping that they're going to be there. I know for sure that some people from the Caribbean will fall into this younger generation category. I don't know how many, but certainly I'm hoping that we will be able to support and protect their rights, if you wish, but certainly their ability to contribute meaningfully in all of these discussions. So we'll see how it actually rolls out in practice.
We're listening.
Okay. So again, protected areas. This is climate change, one of the main themes and one of the parts of the promise of Sydney. How do we go forward? And again, participation and governance, ecosystem support, capacity, knowledge products, and then building this called the coalitions, but basically building the support systems, building all the collaborative arrangements to address this issue of climate change. And this is one of the products that was delivered. And this is just somebody's idea. Well, this is not just one person. This is a graphic that was developed. There are a number of these kinds of graphics. You would love this one that were developed during the Congress. They had this board, you know, and people would go and they would contribute ideas and designs and this one was great for the climate change.
Love it. That's beautiful.
So they had a bunch of these for the one on social compact. All of the different streams had this kind of board that they would design and had people contribute ideas to it. So that was a climate change. Again, these different boxes, what does it mean? How do you then roll those out? You then go back to the 150 recommendations. And what has been happening is that the programs, you now have to put those in some programs and project format, and you have to actually be able to fund them. And so the work has continued and is continuing. And to say at this point that one of the things that the North American region of WCPA just announced is that for each theme, it now has identified a leader to continue the work. So there's a person with some supporting people, of course, and this is all volunteer. Remember, WCPA is a volunteer network, but they now have people who have agreed to maintain the work going forward, to make sure that the promise of Sydney gets transformed into programs, projects, and get rolled out for implementation and for delivery. So the delivery mechanism is crucial, and there's a significant amount of effort that's been placed on designing and resourcing the delivery mechanisms going forward. We're not there but close. Disaster risk reduction and protected areas as a tool. We talk about these nature-based solutions or natural solutions, and they see protected areas as one of the sort of big plans going forward in terms of some people call the green green element or the green approach. If you're my age, we used to call it the soft path to disaster management, but certainly there's more emphasis now on protected areas as a tool for delivering disaster risk reduction strategies. Health and well-being, major plank within the World Parks Congress, and there are attempts to link it to health strategies from other institutions and other processes. So, for example, the World Health Organization has I think a healthy cities, and I think they're working on a healthy island approach, but there are all of these healthy well-being issues, and for the people on urban parks, there are these biodiverse cities, there are healthy cities initiatives. So there are a number of initiatives at the global level dealing with health and well-being, and WCPA and the World Parks Congress have attempted to codify this to design an initiative around health and well-being, because clearly that is one of the traditional roles and objectives of protected areas, is to support well-being. So how is this then structured and delivered? And this is one of the ways in which that is done, coming out of the World Parks Congress. Healthcare costs that were projected, and so again we see to the right of this slide one of the sort of knowledge products, just a state of evidence in 2015. So one of the knowledge products coming forward where they begin to estimate just the cost of doing things differently. So if you're in an urban park and you visit a park once a week or whatever the thing is, what does that mean in terms of your health status, and the cost, of course, to the budgets for parks for doing this. There are some numbers that we recently saw. I don't know if you saw those, Ron, and I don't know if our listeners have seen them, where they talk about the investment, and I think it's a 19-to-1 return on investments, but the global contribution or the economic contribution of parks are something to like $90 billion per year in terms of the economic contribution. Don't hold me to the 90 billion. 90 for some reason is what is in my head, but there are a number of estimates now, and there is more focus.
We will double check this.
Sorry?
Excuse me. We will double check these figures, but right. Thank you for shooting them out.
But there is more focus on trying to estimate the cost and the return on that investment. And when we look at the draft program, you will see where there is some focus on within the IUCN program to try and estimate costs as well. The whole business of environmental accounting, there is now you're bringing that into protected areas development and management as we go forward. Beautiful. So big pieces, all of them won't fit for everybody, but there's enough here, I think, that any region or any institution or any country will see where it can, will see elements that is familiar or relevant to them, and the idea is that this global network can generate the tools and will focus on the capacities to address all of those challenges. A big one, development challenges, reconciling development challenges, is standard as we are losing ecosystems, we are losing the sites that we thought were pristine, and even sites that were being regenerated, whether we call them secondary forests or other areas, we are losing them for a whole range of purposes, for housing, for all kinds of reasons. And so how do we begin to reconcile these issues? And these are some of the elements, if you wish, of reconciling development challenges. So governance, land use planning, economic accounting. You remember the numbers I mentioned before? So there's an attempt to look at economic accounting as one of the sort of ways of saying to the people on the economic side, this is good business, this is a good idea, it contributes to development, to economic development. So all of those kind of issues, how do you then, what are the planks of delivering or dealing with reconciling development challenges and the role of protected areas within that? The financing issue, of course, is important, and major emphasis on financing. Conservation Finance Alliance is just one of the many elements, but as you know, that alliance has several partners, as you can see from the bottom of the screen. And this slide will be available in a PDF forward. We'll make this available later on if people want to watch it. We have it loaded on the portal. The announcement for this forum, for this hangout, is there, but we can also circulate this if anybody wants it, and Ron will try to make sure it's linked to the recording later on. So you will be able to see this, so we won't spend a lot of time on it.
Beautiful.
New social compact, again, is not just about the next generation, but how do we deal with the issue of equitable sharing, use of and decision making for our different natural and cultural heritage resources. What are the dialogue processes that need to be in place? What are the sort of standards and human rights issues? And how do we sort of work through the development challenges to deal with that? How do we deal with leadership around social processes focused on biodiversity and the biodiversity challenge? So again, it is not just about the youth. It is not just about collaboration. How do we agree on how these different groups, these different needs for society, economic, social, environmental protection, how do we together work through the process of delivering the ideas and, of course, the practices to make this happen? As we have always known, those of us on the protected areas and a number of on side of it, we've always talked about, not always, but IUCN, WCPA, for some time have looked at the issue of parks, people, planet. And we've tried to make sure that it is understood clearly that parks support the social, economic, and clearly the environmental components or elements of sustainable development. It links those things. And as you start working through this, how do we make sure that we maintain the integrity of natural systems, but how these natural systems contribute to social and economic development, and of course, in the long term, to the survivability and the integrity of the planetary systems. So to wrap this up, what does the Promise of Sydney mean? And this, in a nutshell, this slide is strengthening the implementation, when, how much, and how we do it, making sure that the innovative approaches that have been identified can be scaled up, that they're applicable, ways of connecting across all the issues, across sectors, across groups, across, of course, physical global scales, and to make sure that the individual, the organizations, the governments, the nations address this together. How do we, what are our commitments at these different individual societal scales, and how do we work together to make this happen? This, in a very quick, very big nutshell, is what the Promise of Sydney is about. So we can, I guess, take any questions, or if you have comments, and then we talk about how we try to fold this into the IUCN Programme 2017-2020, or how it is incorporated at the draft stage, which is at the current stage of development of the program. Thank you.
Yay! Well done. Thank you so very much, Lloyd. If you can, turn your screen sharing off, and we'll chat a little bit about this. That was an awfully big nutshell, but thank you so very much for sharing that. I had not seen that presentation, nor had I seen the panorama site. But wonderful. Sterling, that was a great overview. Viewers who are watching, yes, our Q&A app is loaded, and if you have a question, please ask. And as I say, if you're watching this later on, which honestly 99% of people do, comments are welcome on the Google event page and the YouTube video. And I think if we search for half of those links, we'll find quite a bit of research and reading to do that'll keep us occupied. All right, my question for you, Lloyd, is this. Beautiful summary of Sydney and the World Parks Congress. Does all of this kind of carry forward into these regional forums? Kind of, as I said before, in terms of new generation, are we going to see the younger people really involved in this regional forum? Are we going to see indigenous people from Mesoamerica? Are they going to be having a platform in which to speak and ask questions at this event in Panama?
I don't know. My sense, without seeing the final program, is that the days 2 and 3 will focus on the program. And I don't think they're having different groups talk about their understanding or their needs or what they think should be in the program. I think all of the different interested parties will be in a room together, so you're not representing a specific group, and you will share those ideas. Now, there are people who will, the panelists, so they will share case studies or examples of how some of the innovative approaches have worked, or how the union, the different parts of the union have worked together. So there might be members that people will talk about how a particular member, IUCN members, work with the commissions or work with the local governments or local groups or with the secretariat to deliver some of the current program, what should I say, program interests, if you wish, whether it's through projects or through other mechanisms, through other support mechanisms. So I don't think the focus is on any one of these groups or any specific theme. I think it just looks at the three sort of main elements. If you remember one of my first screens to talk about and we'll get back to that when you look at the program, but there's sort of three main planks to IUCN's program, global program. And so it looks at what are the critical things that need to be addressed, the priorities within those three program elements. The sort of nature-based solutions, making sure that you can deliver, and of course protecting and conserving nature. So all the discussions will focus on the priority program areas, on the program areas and the priorities within that, not so much on who participates and how the participation works. I think after, my sense is, once the program is approved, the quadrennial program, and IUCN, the different elements of IUCN, the secretariat, the commissions, etc., once they start doing work plans, I think that's where you will begin to see the specific or the more detailed processes in terms of making sure different groups participate, different groups are involved in assessments, different groups are in delivery, etc., etc. But in the forum itself next week, I don't get a sense that there's any focus on groups presenting positions or issues that are specific to those groups.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay. And beautiful. And viewers, as I say, hey, we got another viewer here. So if you're watching, and if you have a question, use that Q&A app and let us know. Beautiful. Should we go to the agenda, or what would you like to look at now?
If you have anything else, we can go to not the agenda, but the program, the IUCN program.
Please.
Okay. So let me go to screen share. The program is here, and I am not going to go through the whole program. I'm just basically going to give you show you three snapshots, three pieces of it. And the first is this: what is the program covers? Again, if you are an IUCN member, whether institutional or commission, you can go to the website. But we can also, if you have never seen this or you cannot get it off the website, let us know, and we'll try to share this with you. I don't know if there's a subsequent draft. This is a draft I know that is being looked at. It will be looked at in the regional forum. It will also be looked at in the post-forum era, and then whatever the next iteration is will go into the World Conservation Congress. So they will try to get information, obtain feedback from across the IUCN network, across the union. If you are a member, either institutional or individual, you can actually log into the portal, the IUCN portal, and submit comments on this program. So for those of you who have not yet done that, the window is still open to submit comments on this program, and I encourage you to do that, especially if you're not going to be going to any of the regional fora. A number of them have already been held, and I think by October, all of them will be held. I think the last one will be in October. I don't remember what the schedule is. So what are the big elements? As I said, there are 3 main program areas within IUCN, and the first is this one. I guess I need to, is this: valuing and conserving nature. Okay, let me not do that. Let me go back to the first screen. Sorry, I jumped. So the first program here is this: valuing and conserving nature. The second, effective and equitable governance. And the third is deploying nature-based solutions. The one program approach basically says how the union will work together. There's, for those of you who may not know, the union is several pieces. There's the secretariat, the council, and the secretariat has the main office in Gardner, but it also has regional offices in many places. It has the commissions, and of course it has partners and members. So the members, the commissions, etc. So the union is really this global network of institutions and individuals, with the secretariat playing a sort of coordinating role, if you wish, and the council providing oversight in between the World Conservation Congress forum. So those are the sort of 3 main elements, and the program then looks at it. So if we may just touch on one, let's say effective and equitable governance. This should jump you. So each program area has this sort of structure to it. It introduces it. It talks about why it is important. In this case, for governance, some of the core values or principles that should be incorporated to the greatest extent possible in designing this program and in making sure that it is implemented over the next 4 years and beyond. So what are the principles and how are all of those incorporated? I'm scrolling too fast, stop me, but I just want to show you how each area was is configured as it is. So there are these various elements of governance and equity and all of those things. There's a situation analysis, rationale. So there's all of that background as to what is happening and why, and the rationale behind why we should be doing what we're doing. And IUCN now is where in all of that does IUCN fit? And this is IUCN's justifying or providing the rationale for IUCN's role in this global scenario. Okay, so this is just to show you how it is laid out. So global situation, IUCN's role, and the approach that is going to be taking. And then, of course, how do we monitor that? So there are these global results with these different elements. What do we expect if we do it, what we're supposed to do? What do we expect to achieve? And so the program lays out the expectation in terms of the ideas behind what is the result. If we do what we're supposed to be doing, what we say needs to be done, what are the results? Okay, and I'm showing you this because this is what the program will focus on. Are these global results and sub-results, are they properly worded, or do they make sense, and how will we then map the delivery of these? So those are the global results, sub-results, and for each program area, it has that format. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So if we want to then see, go straight to, let me see if I can jump. It worked last time. What does this one approach? So those are the 3 program elements, and the structure. How do we do one approach? And the one approach, as you know, is the idea that IUCN's program is one program. It's not institutions, it is not even regional, it is one global program which all parts of the union should work towards delivering that program at their level. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that IUCN was actually, several parts to this union, and here we see the parts: the members, council, the committees, the commissions, and the secretariat working together to do this, of course, with their different partners. The idea is then they're one program, and all of the elements will work towards doing that. And this just says we'll work together. The program priorities, how do we link those global targets we saw before, or those priorities, to what we see as the global scenario? So it is basically just to work through this framework, and the last piece is the framework itself. And this is going to be a substantive discussion in Panama. Is here we talk about the results when we're mapping the delivery, so the global result and the sub-results, the indicators, the targets over. So 2020 will be the end of the first quadrennial, and you do it over a long period. You know you can't design global programs in 4-year periods. It may make no sense thinking you're going to change the status, for example, of ecosystems, or change the paradigms in 4 years. So you design longer periods, and then of course you break it up into these time slots. And they're quadrennial simply because IUCN's programming is a 4-year program, it's a quadrennial program. So you break it up in those kind of time slots. So the discussion in Panama will, for each program area like that, that's the one program area. Here's the global target, global result that we expect to see, and how do we then break it out into those different sub results? And we'll do this for the three program areas. Okay.
Okay.
Within each of those program areas, these sort of nature-based, the 3 that we saw before, how does the promise of Sydney gets incorporated? And that is in the document. When you read the document, all the different things that are part of IUCN's program. Sorry to scroll on, but when you read each program area, it talks about how all of IUCN's work areas will be incorporated. So the promise of Sydney is just one part of the programming, and to be incorporated within each program area. How does protected areas support each of the 3 main programs of IUCN? And we're not going to read the document to figure out what it says. I mean, people should actually read the document to see, if you're interested in protected areas, how does it actually figure into each program area? And I encourage you to read the document.
Beautiful. 1 second. Lloyd, we do have a question, and I'm going to be asking it in a second, from Suzanne Davis.
Should I keep this up, or do you want me to go back to the main screen?
I would say stop your streaming, and I would say stop your streaming. Let me stream. I want to take us over to the IUCN portal and just show people who aren't aware of it. Here's the portal from the IUCN, and
zoom in on that a little bit, Ron, so that.
Say this again, Lloyd.
Could you zoom in on that so it fills the screen? People can see a little bit more if we're watching.
Well, let's see. See if I can make that a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And if we go, 1 second. Nope, that's not what I wanted. And then if we go to the IUCN, well, let's see if I'm doing this right.
But you're in the portal already?
No, I am in the portal already. And,
right.
Excuse me, I'm on a different page. And then it says, there we are, I'm like, there, is that a little bit bigger?
Thank you.
And it's, all right, have your say. Here's the draft IUCN program. And in 3 languages, yay. We'll click that and, oops, I'm not authorized to access this page.
Okay.
Oops.
Okay.
Let's see. Good try. But we will see if we can find this. We'll see if we can find this document. You know, I kept on reading. You know, this information. You know, one of the goals was to be open and transparent, and I think we, you know, please be open and transparent. We really would like to read these documents and contribute to them. I want to ask you, Lloyd, a question from Suzanne Davis, and it's all about the Caribbean. By the way, where are you based? Where are you right now, Lloyd?
Oh, I'm in the U.S. Virgin Islands in St. Thomas. Susan, if it's the same Susan I'm thinking about, is actually based in Jamaica, in Kingston, the clearinghouse, the biodiversity clearinghouse mechanism. But she might not be there at this time. Who knows where in the world you can be?
Well, here's Suzanne's question. It's in our Q&A app, and she says, creating useful knowledge products for the Caribbean will require improved management of protected area data and information at national levels. Will there be any discussion at the forum, perhaps as a major capacity building priority, on data and information management?
Okay. I don't know if there is not, as far as I know, within the 3 days, a separate focus on data management. But once you start talking about the standards and the targets and all of those things, I would assume that you will start looking at data to support that. That's one. Two, if you look at IUCN support at to the different multilateral and environmental agreements, to some extent, we will need to start looking at data because it speaks to, for example, the biodiversity targets. And in 2020, there's a major review for the targets to see if we're there. That is a data-driven process. So I suspect that within the discussions of the program, there will be some discussion of data management, collection, management, dissemination, use, etc. However, having said that, BioPharma has the day before, when we all get in, the actual day before the official start, there's a focus on the observatory. Is it called observatory? The BioPharma data management platform that's being developed in 3 regions. So there is one in the Caribbean that's based in Barbados at the University of the West Indies. They have an agreement to house it. And they have been developing the sort of templates and the supporting structures and the platforms to do data management. Now, how are they capturing site level and national level data is something they would need to tell us. I have not participated in any of their training sessions, and I have not gone to any of their work, to any of their training sessions. Now, I was invited to the BioPharma meeting, the BioPharma presentation in Panama next week. Unfortunately, I received the invitation after I'd already booked my tickets and made my arrangements. So I will arrive after it's finished. But there is a focus through the BioPharma, but and I assume that will then feed into the program discussions later in the week.
you. I hope that answers your question, Susanna. Thank you very much. And Lloyd,
If
thank
I
you for the
may touch on that, expand on that a little in terms of not just what's happening at the forum. BioPalma and the Caribbean Natural Resources Institute, or Canary as we lovingly call them, just completed last month or several weeks ago a training activity for terrestrial protected areas managers in Trinidad. And as part of that, there was some level of data collection. So my sense is that for every training activity that BioPalma either leads or is involved in, they use it as an opportunity to do data collection from the people who participate. I was also informed just a few weeks ago or a week or two ago by the World Conservation Monitoring Center that they're working with BioPalma and other bodies at the regional level to try and improve the data that's in the world database of protected areas. So they have mechanisms that are ongoing. As some of you may know, that leading into the World Parks Congress, WCMC, the World Conservation Monitoring Center, produced what is called the Protected Planets Report. And so there was that major push to collect as much, well, to update the data that was in the World Database on Protected Areas. And there's an ongoing push to do that, to maintain the accuracy of that data. So even if there is no IUCN project outside of BioPalma, there is an interest. They are attempting to do that at a global level. And as WCPA members who receive emails and other communique from me would know, that we're trying to encourage site managers to actually upgrade that information, and for system managers to begin to put mechanism in place at the national level to collect, maintain, and use the data. We will try to do that. We still have, I am still trying to work on regional projects, and part of that will be to focus on the data management issue. But of course, not of course, but that is taking some time. I haven't been successful, and with this program in place, I have not yet been able to figure out how to get IUCN itself to design, to let us design those projects. So there is project development taking place through BioPalma and in the office in Costa Rica. I don't know the extent to which Caribbean WCPA members are involved, but I have not been involved. I have not been asked to participate in any project development exercise. So we'll try to work through how the one program works and how the union actually works together better. So hopefully data is a big one. So we'll try to focus on that to some extent. Yes.
Lloyd, I want to thank you for your time. This has been a fantastic hour, and chock full of information. I would, let you have some final comments, but I would like to suggest to you and to the participants at the conference in Panama, I would love to do a recap, 2 or 3 weeks after the regional forum, and see if we can find out what happened, and see if we can move some of this communication and information sharing forward.
Okay, well, if there are no other comments or questions from our viewing public, one is just to say thanks to you for always being very responsive, very helpful in helping the technologically challenged people like myself to connect to our networks, to people who are interested. For people who are not part of the WCPA network, we welcome you if you have interest, if you're active in any element, any area of work that supports protected areas development in any country. We focus on the Caribbean because, of course, we're WCPA Caribbean, but certainly TAPAS and WCPA is a global network, and so please join us. in terms of how we roll this out, global programs are global programs. They're aggregate, they speak to, try to provide a common language, a common platform, common results, if you wish, that we work towards the same set of ideas, concepts, and targets. This has to be translated both to national sensitivities, national priorities, and regional priorities. So designing the delivery mechanisms, designing the processes, designing targets, making sure that those targets, those outcomes are sensitive to your needs is absolutely crucial. If you don't try to shape that as an individual or as an institution, it becomes much more difficult at the end, towards the end, to do that. So now that we have an opportunity to comment on the program, please comment. If you not a member of IUCN, but you're watching this, but you know IUCN members, you're active in, whether it's a national, local, or global conservation movement, contact an IUCN member. If you are in the country where there's a forum, please participate, because you only get a chance once every 4 years to shape the program. And it, as I said before, it becomes much more difficult to shape the design and the delivery at the back end of these processes. So please participate, please be as supportive as possible. And of course, we look forward to, in the post-World Conservation Congress era, to work together to design and deliver to meet our own local needs and the needs of our people.
Always inspiring, always inspiring. Lloyd, thank you so much for your time, and we will continue this conversation. Viewers, thank you very much for watching, and as I say, we will continue this conversation, and you're part of it.
Thank you.